Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, our brethren in Georgia, in Kansas, and Texas, our brethren in Fiji Island, in Mexico, Spain, in Africa, in Kenya, Pakistan, to the United Kingdom, and also to our brethren in Australia. And to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad, greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our episode number 30 on the subject, the chronological order of events. And still, it is especially dedicated to our brother Steve, sister Corinne, and to the rest of the brethren who are listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. Now, this time I would like to try to compare the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. The book of Daniel, accordingly, it is directly applied to the judgment that pertains to the dead. I would like to read tract number 3, page 49. It says, "But the cleansing of the sanctuary at the end of the 2,300 days, according to Daniel 8 verse 14 and Daniel 7 verse 9 and 10, applies directly to the judgment among the dead." So, the direct application of the book of Daniel is applied directly to the judgment that pertains to the dead. Although it is applied to the living, but only indirectly. It is opposite to the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is directly applied to the judgment that pertains to the living, and applied to the dead only indirectly, and more particularly to Revelation chapter 14. So here in tract number 3, page 49, it says, "This work of separation or cleansing brought to view in the parable of Matthew 13 verse 30, and again in that of Matthew 13 verse 47 to 49, also in the prophecy of Malachi 3 verses 1 to 3, and in that of Ezekiel chapter 9, as well as in Revelation 14, is directly applicable to the judgment day for the living. Track number 3, page 49. Now let us focus first to the book of Daniel. The period which is called the time of the end, we know is divided into two divisions or two sections. The time of the end that pertains to the judgment that pertains to the dead, and the time of the end that is pertaining to the judgment that pertains to the living. So, the book of Daniel is the time of the end, which pertains to the judgment that pertains to the living. Now, I would like to read again track number 15 on page 13. So, I would like to read page 12 and then page 13. It says that John's vision is a forecast of the same event as that revealed to Daniel on chapter 7, is quickly seen from the following brief comparison. So I will no longer read the comparison. You can read it at your own leisure as we quote that whole page in track 15, page 12 and 13. Now in page 13, no, we need to quote the entire pages, page 12 and 13. Now, on page 13, it says, both seers distinctly declare that the event which they saw was the judgment. And we know that the judgment mentioned in the book of Daniel, that is Daniel 7, verse 9, verse 10, and verse 13, according to the comparison. It says, both seers distinctly declare that the event which they saw was the judgment. The difference between the two scenes is that Daniel was led to look into the sanctuary while preparations were being made for the judgment to convene, whereas John was led to look into the sanctuary after the judgment had been set up. In fact, John not only saw the judgment in progress, but he saw the whole proceeding from start to finish. Track number 15, page 13. So, the entire book of Revelation is a complete revelation of the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, according to this reading, from start to finish. Now, whereas Daniel had not been able to see the entire proceedings, But for sure, the book of Daniel is sufficient. Sufficient what? To explain the judgment that pertains to the dead. But pertaining to the judgment that pertains to the living, the only portion that was shown by God to Daniel is only while preparation were being made. And Daniel has no more knowledge when the judicial proceedings that pertains to the living is in progress. And that vision that was shown by God only to John the Revelator. But according to answerer number 1, I would like to read. Answerer number 1 on page 94 and page 95. Let us read. It says, in the following statement, while God clears the way for the 7 last plagues by laying some of his people to sleep in the grave, he has done the same for the event to take place in 1931, if that date be correct. Does the Shepherd's Rod, Volume 1, page 219, mean to teach that the judgment of the dead closed in 1931 or thereabouts? Answer. In the statement in question, the rod has no reference to the investigative judgment. The message sets no date, either exact or approximate, for the closing of the judgment of the dead or for the beginning of the judgment of the living. The time of the cessation of the one event and the beginning of the other is not to be made known until the one is past and the other begun. So, here in answerer number 1, pages 94 and page 95, the prophet, Brother Hotep, made it so plain that he has no knowledge when thus the investigative judgment that pertains to the dead will close, either exact or approximate. That information was never been given by God to B.T. Hotep, according to this reading. So, but it cannot be construed that such information will never be bestowed by God to His people. Because the Shepherd's Rod itself plainly told us in 2SR page 164, saying that, but when our high priest shall begin the atonement for the living, there must be a message of present truth, sounding of the trumpet, urging everyone to lay hold on the Lamb of God, which is Jesus Christ, by which only can He in figure come to the sanctuary, confess his sin, and secure his life. Unless the close of the judgment for the dead and the commencement for the living be made known to us, we would have no present truth while the judgment for the living is in session. But that is impossible, because in the upper portion it says that, but when our high priest shall begin the atonement for the living, there must be a message of present truth. So that statement, there must be a message of present truth, can be easily understood that Jesus Christ, our high priest, shall not begin the atonement for the living before Jesus Christ could send or bestow the present truth under the judgment that pertains to the living. Because we read several times in 11 Symbolic Code number 3, page 5, that present truth comes only from God. And the only reason why God did not bestow such information to B.T. Hotep, and I would like to read that reading in answerer number 1SR page 13. The answer we give is because it was not present truth in their time. 1SR page 13. Because it was not present truth in their time. Because that knowledge is intended only to the saints that will no longer to taste death. And God knoweth beforehand that B.T. Hotep will be laid down to sleep. So, there is no reason for God to bestow that understanding to B.T. Hotep. And we explained several times that that is the heavenly truth mentioned in 2SR 172, that only the 144,000 understood the heavenly truth in that particular time. 2SR page 172. And what particular time mentioned here? When the judgment was in progress. What judgment? The judgment that pertains to the living. So when the judgment that pertains to the living is in progress, there must be heavenly truth, or brothers and sisters, present truth sent by God to the last generation, by which that seal is the basis whether they will be sealed or whether they will be left without the seal. Because in 1SR page 28 it says that the saints of God in all ages are sealed with present truth. And whatever that present truth is, that is the seal. And that is how the judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary is done, brothers and sisters. Its righteousness is being measured to the present truth revealed in that particular generation, according to track number 15 on page 32. And those who are obedient to all the light of that present truth, they will receive the seal and they will be free from the condemnation of the law of God. 2SR 198. So here the statement is very plain that but when our high priest shall begin the atonement for the living, there must be a message of present truth, sounding of the trumpet, urging everyone to lay hold on the Lamb of God, which is Jesus Christ, by which only can he in figure come to the sanctuary, confess his sin, and secure his life. Unless the close of the judgment for the dead and the commencement for the living be made known to us, we would have no present truth, while the judgment for the living is in session. Neither would such judgment be legal or just. So, if God would begin the atonement for the living, but God did not inform the people that their cases are already on trial, such judgment would be illegal, and such judgment is unjust. According to this reading in 2SR page 164. And again, I will not be weary to read that statement in an Adventist activities on page 15. Let us read again the statement. And how will he judge the living without a message declaring that their cases are now to appear before God? And how will he judge the living without a message declaring that their cases are now to appear God? Then it says, would the judge of heaven condemn one without trial? And how shall he judge him without summons? And brothers and sisters, whether you will accept it or reject it, this is the reality. The message that you are listening every now and then, this is the heavenly summons. And here in 2SR 164, it says, he who fails to respond to the heavenly summons will be left without the seal or covering of God, and therefore must be cut off from among his people, as prefigured by the services in the typical Day of Atonement. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. But at this time, let's focus our attention to the complete unfoldment of the book of Daniel, because that is the absolute sign that the proceedings of the judgment that pertains to the living is in progress. Because that is the statement in answerer number 1, pages 94 and 95, that it will not be made known until the one is past and the other begun. Of course, the one that is past is the judgment that pertains to the dead. And the other that began is the judgment that pertains to the living. Now, remember, B.T. Hotep himself declared in the old symbolic code. Let us read again the statement. It says, the book of Daniel and the time of the end. Now, it says here, when does the time of the end begin? And when was the book of Daniel opened? Is it wide open? Answer. The angel who instructed Daniel declared that the book would be closed until the time of the end. Therefore, it says, in the time of the end, the book must be opened. The word does not say that the book is open either at the beginning or at the close of the time of the end, all at once or a little at a time, but simply in the period of the time of the end. However, history proves that the prophecies of Daniel were not all revealed at once, but slowly. The fact that we as yet do not understand the whole book proves that some parts of it are yet closed. Also, the fact that a large part of it is now understood makes it evident that we are living in the time of the end. This time must have begun when the book began to be opened, but if we must declare the beginning of that time in more specific terms, it, in a spatial sense, began in the year 1844. The time of the end is the period just before the end of the world. And we know that the end of the world is the harvest. And it is directly applied to the living. So, in that reading, the shepherd's rod made it so plain that there are still some parts of the book of Daniel which is still closed even in the days of Beti-Hotep. So, one of the absolute sign that the time of the end concerning the book of Daniel, which is pertaining to the judgment that pertains to the dead, which commenced in 1844, the full indication that such time of the end is already ended, brothers and sisters, if the whole book of Daniel is completely opened. Although it is gradually open since 1844. But the prophet says that there are still some parts of it which is still closed in the lifetime of the Beti-Hotep. So, let us now study closely the book of Daniel. And I remember the statement in 1TG number 37, page 10. I would like to read this reading. How do we know that the time is here and that the Lord is now speaking to us? We know it from the fact that these long-cancelled prophecies on the subject are now for the first time unfolded and brought to attention. So if I would like to apply it to the book of Daniel, brothers and sisters, that if the entire book of Daniel is completely unfolded and brought to our attention, then there is no other safe conclusion, brothers and sisters, to conclude that the time appointed is come and we are the people. In page 11, in 1TG 37, page 11, it says, those who are fortunate enough to have this revelation brought to them are the people. There is no other safe conclusion. If God causes the prophecies to be written, sealed, and then unsealed at His will and at the time appointed. 1TG number 37 on page 11. Now, let us now focus our attention to the unrevealed aspects of the judgment. Remember, the statement on White House Recruiter on page 39, let us read the statement. It says, but in what way is it to give absolute power and force to them? It is pointing to the third angel's message that there is a predicted event that such additional message will give tremendous power and force to the three angels' messages, according to this reading in White House Recruiter, page 39. But it says, but in what way is it to give absolute power and force to them? First, by bringing to light the heretofore unrevealed aspects of the judgment. And we already read in tract number 15 that both seers, their vision is pertaining to the judgment. Tract 15, page 13. Both seers, Daniel and John the Revelator, distinctly declare that the events which they saw was the judgment. So the statement, unrevealed aspects of the judgment, in White House Recruiter, page 39, can easily be understood. The unrevealed aspects to the book of Daniel and the unrevealed aspects to the book of Revelation. Or, in other words, it is pertaining to the messages that was given by God to Daniel, and also the messages that was given by God to John the Beloved, by which such understanding was not as yet bestowed by God to Sister White and Betty Hotep, and even to the rest of them. It was not bestowed unto them, brothers and sisters. But the mere fact that the last candlestick, all the light that lighted the 7 lamps, is taken from the golden bowl, and the tubes are 7 tubes, by which, according to 1 TG 14:22, represents the entire ministry, and according to tract number 6, page 62, that ministry began with the 3 horses in Zechariah 1, verse 8 to 11, which pointing to William Miller and his associates. Tract number 2, page 29. So, what I'm trying to emphasize is the statement in tract number 6 on page 23, saying, the storehouse of present truth, the word interpreted. The only storehouse that contains inspired comments on both testaments is the books of the Spirit of prophecy. They therefore are the golden bowl. The symbolism definitely points out that from them, so from that golden bowl, and it says, the ministers must get the light-producing truth with which to supply the church so that it may brightly shine in this dark world, drawing to the light all men who hate the darkness. But the darkness mentioned here, whatever publications which is not inspired by the Spirit of God, that is darkness. There is no light in them. That is the declaration given by the Shepherd's Rod in 2SR, page 288, saying, to the law and the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them, meaning uninspired. Isaiah 8 verse 20, 2SR 288. So, any publications which is not inspired by the Spirit of God, do not expect any light, because the Bible declared there is no light in them, brothers and sisters. And remember, that is, they deceive the people of God by good words and fair speeches. I would like to read again that statement in 2SR 287 and 288. It says, what is inspired and what is not, cunning men under the power of the great deceiver, with good words and fair speeches, have sought to overthrow the faith of the saints in the word of God by almost innumerable interpretations of the scriptures and multiplicity of sects, making it nearly impossible for one to find his way out through the confusion, and thus keeping him in ignorance of the truth. God, knowing beforehand of these cunning devices, has prophetically illustrated the truth by this candlestick in its assemblage of parts, symbolically showing that the truth of the Bible is revealed by inspiration only. Written words can be misconstrued, but symbols cannot, thus making it possible for both learned and unlearned to immediately distinguish the difference between truth and error. Now, what does it mean by written words can be misconstrued but symbols cannot? Brothers and sisters, God provided us Zechariah chapter 4. And that golden candlestick in Zechariah chapter 4 represent the entire membership of the 144,000 living saints. And the light that they obtained was represented only by 7 lamps taken from the golden bowl. And that golden bowl was taken from the 2 olive trees. Now, where we could find the writings of William Miller and his associates, Sylvester Bless and Joshua Himes, Zechariah chapter 1, verse 8 to verse 11. And who explained it? B.T. Hotep. Brothers and sisters, track number 6, page 62, and track number 2, page 29. Where we could find Sister White and B.T. Hotep, Zechariah chapter 4, the 2 golden pipes. Brothers and sisters, so we have already 3 plus 2, 5. Where we could find Alonzo Jones and Wagoner, that is found in the golden bowl, written by the 2 prophets. Sister White and B.T. Hotep recommends the writings of Alonzo Jones and Wagoner and categorize it as the most precious truths cometh from heaven. 2SR 277 and Testimonies to Ministers, page 91. Therefore, brothers and sisters, any other writings that exist after the Shepherd's Rod publications were completely written can never be of God. It will throw out, brothers and sisters, the significance of number 7. That is very plain, brothers and sisters, that only those inspired writings, only those writings inspired by the Spirit of God. So those messengers that arose after B.T. Hotep died and introduces the writings as inspired by the Spirit of God, brothers and sisters, if you fully believe the Shepherd's Rod publications, B.T. Hotep never endorse, never recommends those writings. It can never be of God. Find your explanation in the golden bowl. 2SR 289. And also in track number 11, page 12. Get your doctrine from the golden bowl. So here, it is very plain, brothers and sisters, that the only golden oil are those inspired writings. But the absolute fact is that we already studied that there are cow's dung, brothers and sisters, because cow's dung is included in those inspired writings, because that is the illustration in 1SR page 124. It says, the prophet was told that he could not use wood or coal to bake the cakes upon, but that he should use dung that cometh out of a man. To Ezekiel, it was too repulsive, and he pleaded to be excused. The Lord made an allowance, not by compulsion, but for Ezekiel's sake only, by telling Ezekiel to bake it with cow's dung. And to repeat again, in the ceremonial sacrifices, brothers and sisters, on that sacred offerings, cow's dung is included. Exodus chapter 29 verse 14, Leviticus 4 verse 11, Leviticus 8 verse 17, Leviticus 16 verse 27, Numbers 19 verse 5. But there is no sheep's dung, because the two sheep represent the Bible according to 2 TG 2024. And there is no dung in the Bible, brothers and sisters. What is cow's dung? False applications, false expectations. Only on that inspired writings, from the writings of Miller, Joshua Himes, Sylvester Bless, Sister White, Alonzo Jones, Wagoner, as well as B.T. Hotep, they have false expectations in their lifetime. But it was allowed by God because that false expectation is represented by the cow's dung, by which the barley cake can never be cooked unless the existence of that cow's dung, because God commanded not to bake, not to cook the barley cake with wood or coal, but with cow's dung. So that has an important part in the plan of redemption. Now, brothers and sisters, I would like to read the statement in 1 TG number 14 on page 20. It says, those who do not avail themselves of the golden oil, and those who continue ever to hunt for some kind of oil, or whoever try to extract their own, will, of course, drop into the pit when the earth opens her mouth to swallow up the flood. Then it is that ism breathers and ism seekers shall forever pass away. So it is a serious warning given by the shepherd's rod here in 1 TJ 14 page 20, that if we will hunt other oil rather than the golden oil that cometh from the golden bowl, by which it reproduce 7 tubes, represent the entire ministry, there are only complete inspired writings represented by cow in Isaiah 7 verse 21 and 22. Those that will be misled by that good words and fair speeches, brothers and sisters, they will be dropped into the pit when the earth will open her mouth. I remember, brothers and sisters, in 2SR page 265, it says here, let us read the statement. In 2SR 264 and 265, my brethren, I beg of you, hear the voice of the good shepherd. Awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion, put on the beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city. For henceforth from now on, there shall no more come unto thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. Shake thyself from the dust, arise and sit on thy throne, O Jerusalem. Loose thyself from the bands of thy neck, O captive daughter of Zion. It says, this is the commentary given by the shepherd's rod. As these words are so plain, how can we doubt or misconstrue their meaning? It must be that the church of God is asleep in the dust. Thy God is calling thee, O Zion. God, church, the only object on earth upon which He bestows His supreme regards, is in captivity. She is bound by her neck to men of good words and fair speeches. But those who mislead God's people by good words and fair speeches, this is the message that I would like to read to you. Answerer number 4. Answerer number 4 on page, let's read, page 23. Those that whoever, answerer number 4, page 23, that whoever continues to hold his people in bondage, bondage in what? In good words and fair speeches, mislead God's people. 2SR 265. And it says here, brothers and sisters, answerer number 4, page 23, that whoever continues to hold his people in bondage and in ignorance of his truth, will he tread in his anger and trample them in his fury and sprinkle their blood upon his garments, thereby staining all his raiment, and thus setting his people free. Now, let's go back to our subject, brothers and sisters, concerning the book of Daniel. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, one of the absolute sign that the judgment that pertains to the living is in progress is that the entire book of Daniel is completely unfolded and completely revealed. So, the statement saying in answerer number 1, page 94 and 95, the one is past is pointing to the book of Daniel, and the other begun is pointing to the book of Revelation in its direct and perfect fulfillment of the prophecy, brothers and sisters. And to repeat again, Beti-Hotep himself declared clearly that there are still some parts in the book of Daniel which was not yet understood in the days of Beti-Hotep. But for sure, whatever explanation, it must be found in the golden bowl. Otherwise, the recommendation or the admonition will never be given if the golden bowl is not sufficient. 2SR 289. Find your explanation in the golden bowl. That admonition plainly indicating that the golden bowl is complete and sufficient. And it is called the Inspired Comments, track number 6, page 23. So if you will use comments which is not taken from the golden bowl, that commentary is uninspired. And even though it is good words and fair speeches, it is darkness, brothers and sisters, according to track number 6, page 23. So to be sure that we will reach the kingdom, the admonition is, get your doctrine, brethren, only from the golden bowl. Track number 11 on page 12. Now, let us now proceed to our study. And to repeat again, whatever message or whatever light that will come in the judgment that pertains to the living, it says in page 49, in answerer number 1, the light may come solely from within the message itself. That light will come solely within the golden bowl itself. All explanation must be found in the golden bowl. Now let us focus first to the book of Daniel. Not only the book of Daniel, but as well as the book of Revelation. This is the explanation given by the shepherd's rod. Let us read. 2SR page 111. It says, the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation were written especially for the generation living at the time of the end, and not so much for the Roman world. See Daniel 12 verse 4. They had no understanding of the writings that pertain to the last days, and thus could not have profited by them. 2SR 111. So, all the people living prior to 1844 backwards, they have never been profited by the book of Daniel and by the book of Revelation. It's so because God did not bestow unto them the understanding concerning the book. It says here in 2TG number 7, page 3, Daniel was told to shut and seal the book even to the time of the end. The book, therefore, was not for the understanding of the people for the time of the end, for the people before the time of the end. So then when the book is unsealed and understood, we may know that the time of the end is come. But the time of the end in 1844 is the time of the end that pertains to the judgment, that pertains to the dead. But if we will be talking about the time of the end to the judgment that pertains to the living, it must be that the book of Daniel must be completely unfolded, completely understood, brothers and sisters. And then if that book is completely unsealed, if that book is completely revealed, completely understood, then we may know that the time of the end that pertains to the judgment, that pertains to the living, is finally come. The one is past and the other begun. Answerer number 1, page 94 and page 95. But whatever the message recorded in the book of Daniel, according to the shepherd's rod, no, it was not given to them living prior the time of the end. Because it is illogical and also injustice to the people of God at that time if the particular object in view are those people, but it is God who closed their understanding, then it is injustice and also illogical. So, to the people by which that book, brothers and sisters, is intended, they must be the people by which God will bestow to them the complete understanding concerning the book of Daniel as well as the book of Revelation. I remember the statement in 2SR. I would like to read this reading. 2SR page 161. It says here, the head of the nondescript beast of Daniel 7 in the burning fire with the woman, as depicted in the chart, represents the same event. The beast is a prophecy, and the woman is the revelation of that prophecy. Now, the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain. The beast is a prophecy, and the woman is the revelation of that prophecy. So, the beast is the prophecy, but that beast which is a prophecy, it is revealed in the book of Revelation through the symbolization of the woman in Revelation 17 and Revelation 18. That two chapters is the revelation of that book of Daniel concerning the beast. Now, although that is not our subject, and we will explain it in detail on the subject, the beast and its image. It is very important, brethren, because in our study, let us read again the statement given by the voice of inspiration. Let us read again the statement in 2SR page 199. It says, 2SR 199, in the judgment, it did not say before the judgment, it did not say after the judgment, but rather it did say in the judgment. The same with the statement, the judgment was in progress in 2SR page 172, saying, therefore it is evident that the judgment was in progress. Now let us read again the statement in 2SR 199. In the judgment, it is granted to the saints that had gotten the victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name, to stand on the sea of glass, life eternal. Revelation 15 verse 2. To stand on the sea of glass indicates that, brothers and sisters, the reward, 1 penny, is granted to them. Now, first of all, let us focus first to the statement that had gotten the victory over the beast. The beast is a prophecy, 2SR 161. But the woman is the revelation of that prophecy. So, brothers and sisters, woman represents church. And that woman in Revelation 17 and Revelation 18 is a counterfeit church. The counterfeit church of the living church, represented by the virtuous woman in Revelation chapter 12. So, I would like to read again the statement in the words to the little flock. So let us read. Words to the little flock. On page 11, it says, words to the little flock, page 11. The work of the second angel, if we'll be talking second angel, that is Revelation 14 verse 8. Revelation 14 verse 8. The work of the second angel was to show to the Advent host that Babylon had fallen. And then it says, and as a large portion of them did not learn this fact until the power of the midnight cry wake them up just in time for them to make their escape from the churches before the 10th day came on. Now, remember, the 10th day pointing to the Day of Atonement. Now, I would like to re-emphasize the statement by saying that until the power of the midnight cry wake them up just in time for them to make their escape from the churches before the final Day of Atonement came on. So it is pointing in reality to the final Day of Atonement, because in the primary application, it applies to the commencement of the Day of Atonement in 1844. But that is not the direct application of the second angel of Revelation 14. Now, let us focus first to Revelation 14, verse 8. Do not forget, brothers and sisters, what is the beast? The prophecy. How does that prophecy concerning the beast is revealed? It is revealed through the symbolization of the woman. 2SR 161. What is the woman? Church. Church. So, Revelation 14:8, churches. What churches mentioned in that reading? That before the final Day of Atonement will come, the true people of God must escape on these churches. What does it mean by the word escape from these churches before the final Day of Atonement will come? According to that reading in Words to the Little Flock on page 11. So we need to study closely, brothers and sisters, before that final Day of Atonement will come. Now, I would like to read to you the Old Symbolic Code. Old Symbolic Code. Let us read the statement. One Symbolic Code number 6, page 9. It says, as there was a clause of provision for the antediluvians, for the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah, and for the Jewish nation, just so there is a clause of provision for each individual at the moment that individual rejects the message. Therefore, after the first and second angels' messages were presented to the people at that time, their probation closed and their destinies were unalterably fixed, either for eternal life or for eternal death, as was the case with Saul, king of Israel. One Symbolic Code number 6, page 9. Now the question is that, when would be the destiny of each will be forever fixed? It could no longer be altered. Now let us read track number 15. Track number 15. Let us read again. Page 28. It says, in the typical atonement, everyone's destiny among the professed people of God was forever fixed. When does the destiny of the professed people of God was forever fixed in the Day of Atonement. Those who complied with the demands of the law were left to live, and those who did not were cut off from among the people. Thus, it must also be in the antitypical atonement. So when does the destiny of each is forever fixed, can no longer be altered? That is on the Day of Atonement. But we are talking about the final Day of Atonement as stated in that passage in track number 15, page 28. As we continue, it says, so in the great day, track 15, page 29, on the next page, it says, so in the great day of final atonement. If we will be talking about final atonement, that is the last day of atonement, brothers and sisters, that the destiny of all were forever fixed. It is called by the spirit of prophecy as the irrevocable decision. Right? We read that several times on the Great Controversy. The Great Controversy, page 490. Now let us read again to familiarize. It says, the righteous and the wicked will still be living upon the earth in their mortal state. Men will be planting and building, eating and drinking, all unconscious that the final irrevocable decision has been pronounced in the sanctuary above. Now, I would like to make you an illustration here in the Great Controversy on page 614. The Great Controversy 614. It says, when God's presence was finally withdrawn from the Jewish nation, priests and people know it not. Though under the control of Satan and swayed by the most horrible and malignant passions, they still regarded themselves as the chosen of God. The ministration in the temple continued. Sacrifices were offered upon its polluted altars, and daily the divine blessings was invoked upon a people guilty of the blood of God's dear Son and seeking to slay his ministers and apostles. So when the irrevocable decision of the sanctuary has been pronounced and the destiny of the world has been forever fixed, the inhabitants of the earth will know it not. The forms of religion will be continued by a people from whom the Spirit of God has been finally withdrawn, and the satanic zeal with which the Prince of Evil will inspire them for the accomplishment of his malignant designs will bear the semblance of zeal for God. The Great Controversy 614. And brothers and sisters, that is the type. The antitypical Jewish nation is the United States of America. We can prove that with abundance of evidences, brothers and sisters. Remember, in 4SP, I would like to read to you. It says here, on 398, 4SP, the coming conflict. The greatest and most favored nation upon the earth is the United States. A gracious providence has shielded this country and poured upon her the choicest of heaven's blessings. Here the persecuted and oppressed have found refuge. Here the Christian faith in its purity has been taught. These people have been the recipients of great light and unrivaled mercies, but these gifts had been repaid by ingratitude and forgetfulness of God. The Infinite One keeps a reckoning with the nations, and their guilt is proportioned to the light rejected. A fearful record now stands in the registers of heaven against our land, but the crime which shall fill up the measure of her iniquity is that of making void the law of God. Brothers and sisters, and it is even more pertaining to the sanctuary, because they polluted the sanctuary, pointing to antitypical Assyria. I would like to read that reading in 1TG 23. 1TG number 23, page 6. You can read the entire page, but I would like to read that statement. In numeration number 3, it says, she has polluted the sanctuary and has declared the law of God void. 1TG 23, page 6. She has polluted the sanctuary and has declared that the law of God void. Who is to be blamed? Is it the civil aspects? No, it is the church. It is the church. The real blame. B.T. Hotep says, I would like to read to you. In 2TG number 6, it says, 2TG number 6 on page 21, the real blame falls on the church herself. 2TG number 6, page 21. The real blame falls on the church herself. Now let us go back to our main subject, brothers and sisters, concerning the book of the Daniel. And first, it is applied to the beast. The beast represent system. And I would like to read again to SR page 87. It says, and just to focus to the portion, it says, make it impossible, to SR page 86, to SR page 86, make it impossible for another universal beast, meaning system. So there are two systems employed by the devil, universal system and local system. In the upper part, page 86, it says, it verifies the fact that the two-horned beast denotes a local system. So I would like to read again. It says, it verifies the fact that the two-horned beast denotes a local system. So there are two systems employed by the devil, local system and universal system. And unless we could be able to understand that two systems, the local system and the universal system. Now here's another system, but this system is revealed by the representation of the woman. Now let us read here in 2SR on page, let us read the statement. 2SR page 114, it says, the nondescript beast has only one horned head, a symbol of a mono-sectarian system by alliance of civil power with religious creed. But the scarlet-colored beast has 7 heads, which denote a multi-sectarian combination under a supreme religio-political jurisdiction, the woman. 2SR page 114. So there are 2 systems, mono-sectarian system and the multi-sectarian system. So, what is the difference between the local system and the universal system? Mono-sectarian system and multi-sectarian system. Or in other words, the devil employed all kinds of system to deceive the very elect, the 144,000 living saints. I would like to read that reading in 1SR page 214. It says, 1SR 214, the intention of the complete satanic scheme is to deceive the whole world. So what is the number of completeness? 7. So 7 systems employed by the devil to deceive the whole world. Now, where we could find that 7 systems, where we could find this 7 systems. There are only 7 beasts recorded in the Bible, Daniel and Revelation, which is universal system. And we know that the lamb-like horn being 2 horns cannot be a universal system but a local system. That complete satanic scheme is revealed by God through the symbolization of the scarlet-colored beast. The revelation of the scarlet-colored beast is of God. It is not of Satan. It is of God. And God used the symbolization of the scarlet-colored beast to completely unmask the deception of Satan, to completely reveal how the devil deceived the whole world, and his intention is even more directly pointed to the 144,000 living saints. So the statement in 2SR, I would like to read to you. 2SR page 112. It says, 2SR 112, since the scarlet-colored is the last in the symbolical procession of beasts, he must possess all. So the word all meaning complete, all the characteristics of his ancestors. Or in other words, 2SR 112, brothers and sisters, can be easily understood that all the system employed by the devil to deceive God's people from Adam down to the end, it was revealed by God by one symbolization, the scarlet-colored beast. Therefore, to understand completely the scarlet-colored beast is to completely unmask the deception of Satan. To completely unmask, brothers and sisters, how the devil deceived the whole world. And of course, it was completely revealed in the book of the Shepherd's Rod publications. Now, I would like to read again the statement here in 1 SR 214. It says, the statement made by Christ is true, that he, Satan, will try to deceive even the very elect, the 144,000, if it were possible. And I would like to say that, yes, it is possible that Satan could deceive the 144,000 living saints if Jesus Christ will not intervene. Only Christ's intervention that make the deception of Satan impossible to deceive the 144,000. But without the intervention of Jesus Christ, the illustration in the Bible, the wise, all of them are slumbered and sleep. Then it is easy for them to be deceived. But thank God, Jesus Christ, for the sake of the saints that will no longer to taste death, for the sake of that generation which designed by God to fit them for translation, Jesus Christ made an intervention, brothers and sisters. And through that intervention of Jesus Christ, became impossible for the devil to deceive the 144,000 living saints. Now, I would like to continue reading. It says, the spirit of prophecy, 1 SR 214, the spirit of prophecy speaking on this scripture says, this demon worship was revealed to him, John, and it seemed to him as if the whole world were standing on the brink of perdition. You see, brothers and sisters, it is called demon worship, according to this reading. In Testimonies for the Church, Volume 6, it says here, Volume 6 on page 14, it says, Satan is working to the utmost to make himself as God and to destroy all who oppose his power. And today, the world is bowing before him. His power is received as the power of God. The prophecy of Revelation is being fulfilled, that all the world wandered after the beast. Revelation 13 verse 3. I would like to read to you, brothers and sisters, this reading on 1888 by Alonzo Jones. It is concerning, let me read to you the image to the beast. Image to the beast. So, it says here, let's read. It says, but do men receive the mark of the beast before the image is made? by Alonzo Jones, Image to the Beast, the image to the beast. So let us read the statement. But do men receive the mark of the beast before the image is made? Under the message and the responsibility which the message brings, are men held responsible for receiving the mark of the beast and worshiping the beast before the image comes on and undertakes to compel them to do it? You see, brothers and sisters, compel them to do it. There is absolute necessity. Or how could I say that word? Because the statement given by the shepherd's rod is that because they place themselves subject to be misled. Let's read 2SR page 153. It says, let us read the statement. The time of that wholesale deception is at hand. It will take more than great knowledge of theology to escape the most powerful trap His satanic majesty has ever devised. The wonderful miracles will be convincing, and the apparently genuine spirit of worship will bring deep conviction upon those who are subject to be misled. So, they place themselves subject to be misled. In what way? Brothers and sisters, by allowing, I would like to use the term, by allowing the angels to blot out their names in the Lamb's book. Once your names will be blotted out in the Lamb's book of life, you are compelled to worship the beast, such demon worship. You cannot escape because there is a supernatural power. And that supernatural power, no one could be able to resist that supernatural power except the power of Christ. And you are no longer under protection of the power of Christ, because the promise is that Christ's power will be manifested only to deliver to them, all of them whose names are found written in the book. So it says here, brothers and sisters, I would like to read here in 2SR 109 because maybe we are only thinking that it is just a simple thing. But I would like to read here in 2SR 109. It says, as the word exposes this great deception, it is called great deception. In 2SR 153, it is called wholesale deception. So the only one that could be able to escape that deception is by individual. There is no church as a body that can escape that wholesale deception. Only by individual. Now I would like to read here in 2SR 109. As the word exposes, or the prophetic word of God, right? Because that is the statement in 2SR page 153. Let us read again. 2SR 153, it says, only by a prophetic knowledge of the truth, with confidence in thus saith the Lord, and in the power of His Spirit, can one escape the wily snares of the devil when that wholesale deception will finally be fulfilled. Only by the prophetic knowledge of the Word of God. Now, let us read here in 2SR 109. It says, as the Word exposes this great deception, One would think that the world would open its eyes and refuse to be charmed by such satanic wonders. And I think this reading is even more applied to Shepherd's Rod believers as well as Sabbath keepers, because their imagination of such event, mark of the beast system, it seems that it is just a very simple thing by saying that, because I meet many Sabbath keepers saying that when the time came when the Sunday law enforcement will be implemented, I will not accept it because I know that it is not the true Sabbath. It seems very easy to say that, brothers and sisters, but they did not even know the real impact when that event will take place. Now, I would like to read again this reading in 2SR page 109. And you think our knowledge, brothers and sisters, is sufficient enough? No. Only by the power of Jesus Christ. And that power of Jesus Christ will never help anyone whose names had been blotted out in the Lamb's Book of Life. Now, I would like to read this reading in 2SR page 109. It says, as the word exposes this great deception, one would think that the world would open its eyes and refuse to be charmed by such satanic wonders. So, that is the reality. Many think that it is just easy to refuse, and they will not be charmed by that satanic wonders. But it says, but Satan knows that. But Satan knows that the people are unmindful of the Word of God. Satan knows that the people are unmindful of the Word of God. They did not even read the Bible, saying that all, without any exemptions, the Bible will not tell a lie. It says in Revelation 13, verse 8, and all, the word all, without exemption, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship Him, meaning they cannot escape such demon worship. All of them shall worship Him whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. You think, brothers and sisters, that reading is not completely telling you and I that once our names are not found written in that book, Lamb's Book of Life, sealed with 7 seals, would you think you have strength to withstand that powerful trap that had been ever devised, according to the Shepherd's Rod, by satanic majesty? Do not deceive your own self, brethren. It says here, but Satan knows that the people are unmindful of the Word of God, and that their emotions are easily moved by supernatural marvels and the eloquence of men. Therefore, he will perfect the contrivance, and many will fall into it regardless of warnings. Just yesterday, I have a friend. He is a retired pastor of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and sent me that a video, recorded video by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that they're trying to show that the coming of Jesus Christ is soon, very soon, will finally be fulfilled. And that's why I sent him message that unless we know those events that will occur prior to the visible coming of Jesus Christ, and then avoid to escape them, our knowledge concerning the second visible coming of Jesus Christ will avail nothing. Brothers and sisters, it says that many will worship the beast, that demon worship. What is the beast? That system. Nobody can escape that system. Regardless of its warnings, all Sabbath keepers, they're giving warnings that there is a Sunday law. Brothers and sisters, but they think that they can escape that satanic, powerful majesty, supernatural system devised by the devil without the protection of Christ. And the only people to be protected by Jesus Christ are those whose names left written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And then it says, brothers and sisters, let us read 2 SR 109. The human mind cannot comprehend, the human mind cannot comprehend that mysterious and irresistible power. At this time, in reality, we did not comprehend how mysterious that supernatural power to be employed by the power of darkness. And that power is irresistible. It says, irresistible power that is soon to spread its dreadful shadow over the inhabitants of the earth. No mortal being can stand against that supernatural civil authority, civil system, supernatural civil system, and supernatural religious system. Those who are students of the Word, trusting in God without reservation, and thus filled with the Holy Spirit, will escape that dreadful trap. Filled with the Holy Spirit. Brothers and sisters, indicating that God's people will be filled with the Holy Spirit before that event will take place, my dear brothers and sisters. Otherwise, they cannot withstand such supernatural civil system and supernatural religious system. But if we place ourselves subject to be misled, life is just what we make it. I would like to read again that statement. Here in let us read again the statement given by the voice of inspiration. It says here, written by, let's read. The rejection of the truth of God leaves men the captives of Satan. The truth of God mentioned here is the present truth. Once you reject the present truth, you place yourselves under captives of Satan, and the subjects of his deception. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 9 to 12. The greater light which men reject, the greater the power of deception and of darkness which will come upon them. The Advent message has been given in our own land and by the mass rejected, and no greater and indeed no other light can ever be given to those who have turned away from that. The third angel gives us warning of the danger which is now before us. The warning precedes the danger that we by seasonable admonition may make our escape. So that is very logical. The warning precedes the coming danger. What is the coming danger? That soon coming wholesale deception, great deception, brothers and sisters, supernatural, mysterious civil system and religious system. And it is called by the Shepherd's Rod also as the threefold union. So we need to study closely. I would like to read again the statement here. It says, under the message and the responsibility, image to the beast, the one I read, I would like to finish. But do men receive the mark of the beast before the image is made? Under the message and the responsibility which the message brings, are men held responsible for receiving the mark of the beast and worshiping the beast before the image come on and undertakes to compel them to do it. I would like to use the statement, brothers and sisters, that because we place ourselves under the subjection of Satan by rejecting the present truth, then we place ourselves subject to be misled. And brothers and sisters, we give that supernatural power of the devil to compel us to worship such demon worship. Because we place ourselves subject to be misled. The same with the statement here. I would like to read to you. Track number 15. On track number 15, it says, on page 57, let's see. Also, I would like to read the upper portion. It says, in these verses are pictured the faith, the fear, and the smitten conscience of all who are not able to stand in the day of the judgment of the living, the great and dreadful day of the Lord, the wrath of the Lamb in the great time of trouble, such as never was. Daniel 12 verse 1. The day following in the appearance of the antitypical Elijah the prophet. Yes, the day in which those who have not clad themselves in the wedding garment are cast into outer darkness, there to gnash their teeth. Also in these scriptures in Revelation 6 verse 14 to 17, asserts the spirit of truth. Two parties are brought to view. One party permitted themselves to be deceived and took sides with those with whom the Lord has a controversy. They misinterpreted the messages sent them and clothed themselves in robes of self-righteousness. So think it thoroughly, the statement, permitted themselves to be deceived. By taking sides with those with whom the Lord has a controversy, we need to understand who are these people by which God has a controversy with them. And by taking sides to those people by which God has a controversy with them, then you are placing yourself subject to be deceived, subject to be misled. And of course, that is pointing to the people by which they were rejecting the present truth. Brothers and sisters. And sometimes I'm thinking, brothers and sisters, that why is it that the Bijan are so much interested to lift up the headquarters, and they were not interested to study closely if the present truth is bestowed by God in their borders, in that headquarters. The mere fact that the only message that they proclaim is the headquarters, brothers and sisters, plainly indicating that they have no message to proclaim. They have no message to proclaim. And just to aggrandize, brothers and sisters, by promoting the headquarters, that it seems that without the headquarters, brothers and sisters, they cannot stand. But I would like to say to all the faithful Davidian, the most important thing is the present truth, because the present truth can stand without headquarters. But the headquarters cannot stand without the present truth. Remember when Jesus Christ established the Christian church, the apostolic church, they have no headquarters, brothers and sisters. But the Sanhedrin, the Jewish church, they have their headquarters. But the apostles and Jesus Christ himself, they had no headquarters. But they had the present truth. Ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. When God raised up those messengers, Martin Luther, the only thing that Martin Luther had is the present truth, the message in his days. Now, it says here, I would like to read this reading in 1 TJ 45:20. It says, that shepherds are slain because they have kept the sheep away from the Lord's green pasture, present truth. What is green pasture? Present truth. Headquarters is not present truth. The desire of God supposed to be that in that headquarters, the present truth must be lovingly welcomed. The same with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Supposed to be that headquarters that was established in Washington, D.C., supposed to be the present truth must be deposited into that headquarters. But what happened? What they did when the shepherd's rod message arrived in 1930? And that is the reason of like the prophet to establish headquarters in Waco, Texas. But we are following the footsteps of those people. The same with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The same with the Jewish people. Thinking that the headquarters could save them. And we did not learn the lessons in the past. Headquarters in Gilgal, in Shiloh, in Mount Moriah, in Mount Zion. These four headquarters, it is God Himself who declared that the temple would be established on that specific place. That is God's temple. But when they reject the present truth, it was utterly destroyed. Now, let us go back, brothers and sisters, to the reading. Here in 1888 message, it says, and worshiping the beast before the image comes on and undertakes to compel them to do it? No. Because we found in our lessons here that until the image was made, there was a way or escape from the worship or of the beast. The way was open for a man to refuse. But after the image is made, there is no way open for a man to refuse to worship the beast, because there is no place on the earth where the power comes. There is no escape anymore. And then it is that men become responsible for worshiping either the beast or his image. There is no other way of escape. The only way is to turn to God. Then the time comes that the decision is clear-cut and must be made between God and the powers of the earth alone. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. If you wait, brethren, the material side, because that's what all Sabbath keepers are thinking about. Not knowing that the most important part to escape that such wholesale deception is to have our names in the Lamb's book of life. Because the Bible is very plain, so plain. All of them whose names are not written or found in the Lamb's book of life shall worship Him. They will be compelled to believe. They will be compelled to submit. And only those whose names are found written in the Lamb's book of life could be able to escape such oncoming wholesale deception. Now let us go back to our subject concerning the book of Daniel. Now I would like to read tract number 15, page 15. Let's read tract number 15, page 15. It says here, tract number 15, page 15. The student of advancing truth will also note that Daniel refers to but one judicial session. Although he does make mention of the judgment twice, first in verse 10 of chapter 7 and second in verse 22. This will be seen in the following 8 paragraphs. Now, before going to the 8 paragraphs, let us focus first to these 2 verses. Revelation 7 verse 10 and Revelation chapter 7 verse 22. Now, what is the statement given by the sharper's rod? Daniel refers only one judicial session. Although that one judicial session, Daniel mentioned it twice. But the absolute fact is that there is only one judicial session that was shown by God to Daniel. And that one judicial session, Daniel divided it into 2. Verse 10 and verse 22. But these 2 verses, verse 10 and verse 22, is under one judicial session. Now, here's another statement that I would like to read. Track number 15, page 17. It says, "Clearly then, Daniel saw only one judicial sitting, but made mention of it twice." What is the difference between session and sitting? In track number 15, page 15, it says, Daniel saw only one judicial session, but mention of it twice. The first mention is Daniel 7 verse 10. The second mention is Daniel 7 verse 22. But in track 15, page 17, it says, Daniel saw only one judicial sitting, and also Daniel mentioned it twice. Then it says, let us read again. Track 15, page 17. "Clearly then, Daniel saw only one judicial sitting, but made mention of it twice. First, in connection with describing what he saw in vision, and second, in connection with obtaining the angel's interpretation of the vision." So there is quite difference between one judicial session and one judicial sitting. In one judicial session, the first mention is verse 10, and the second mention is verse 22. How about in one judicial sitting? What is the first mention? The first mention is that the explanation given by Daniel after he saw the vision. And the second mention is that his understanding after obtaining the angel's interpretation of the vision. So, let us go back to the reading in track 15, page 15. It says, in the 14th verses, Daniel described all he saw while in vision. And it says, and in verse 15, he explains how grieved and troubled he became after considering the damaging work which the fourth beast did. Then in verse 16, he tells that he approached the angel who stood by and requested his interpretation of the things seen. In compliance with this request, the angel answered. Now, what is the difference between the first mention of judicial session and the first mention of judicial sitting? The difference is that the first mention of the judicial session is only one verse, Daniel 7 verse 10. But the first mention of the judicial sitting, the first judicial sitting contained 14 verses. So, judicial sitting is more broader than the judicial session. Because the judicial session contained only 2 verses. The first judicial session is verse 10. The second judicial session is verse 22. But in the judicial sitting, the first mention contained 14 verses. But, let us continue reading here in page 15 and 16, in track number 15. It says, "These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever." So, verse 15, now I would like now to enumerate the entire chapter of Daniel 7. God showed only one judicial sitting to Daniel, according to track 15, page 17. But Daniel mentioned of it twice. The first mention of the first judicial sitting is the first 14 verses in Daniel 7. And verse 15 is describing how Daniel had been troubled, perplexed, bewildered. He could not comprehend completely such damaging work of the exceeding of that fourth beast. Because the exceeding great horn is found in Daniel 8, the continuation of the vision. The damaging work done by that fourth beast. And because of that, he requested Angel Gabriel to expound his vision. And the answer given by Angel Gabriel is found on verses 17 and 18. So verses 17 and 18 is the explanation given by Angel Gabriel. Now, after the explanation given by Angel Gabriel, let us continue in page 15, in track 15. It says, track 15, page 15. This exceedingly brief interpretation did not satisfy Daniel, and being particularly interested to know in detail the things described in verses 7 to 14. What is 7 to 14? The first mention of the first judicial sitting. So let us read again. It says, and being particularly interested to know in detail the things described in verses 7 to 14, the truth concerning the judgment as well as concerning the fourth beast and its little horn that had the eyes of men and a mouth speaking great things, Daniel requested further elucidation, again of necessity, mentioning the judgment. Accordingly, the angel readily explained, confining his interpretation strictly to the fourth beast symbolization and to the judgment. Now, let us enumerate one by one. First, when Daniel requested Angel Gabriel, his request is not as yet specific. He just requested Angel Gabriel to explain his vision from verse 1 to 14 in Daniel 7. So that is the request of Daniel, to explain his vision from verse 1 to verse 14. And verse 15 describe the how Daniel had been greatly troubled because he could not understand the vision. And because of that, he requested Angel Gabriel to explain his vision. And the explanation given by Gabriel is verse 17 and 18. But the explanation of Gabriel, according to the shepherd's rod, is very brief. General term. So Daniel requested again, but his request is even now more specific. He wants Angel Gabriel to explain to him the fourth beast and the judgment. And because of that, Angel Gabriel, in compliance with the request of Daniel, he confines his interpretation to the fourth beast and the judgment. Brothers and sisters, I remember that statement in the writings of Alonzo Jones. Let me see if I could find that statement. That when Daniel asked, if you could project that statement, that saying that the fourth beast contained more verses to explain or the statement says, how many verses in explaining the first beast, the second beast, and the third beast. That is the statement used by Alonzo Jones. But when explaining the fourth beast, it contained many verses to explain the fourth beast. Now let us go back to the shepherd's rod. You find that statement? How? So let us read. It says, look again at the vision. Advent Review Sabbath Herald, 338, paragraph 5. Look again at the vision and see how much space is devoted to each of the three. And then how much is devoted to the fourth in comparison. One verse to each of the first three, then comes the seventh verse with its description of the fourth beast. And it takes the seventh, the eighth, or the seventh, the eighth, the ninth, the 10th, and 11th verses to describe the fourth one. More verses and longer ones too are needed to describe the fourth one than all the others put together, fully twice as much space. So when we'll be studying the book of Daniel, the focal point is the fourth beast. So the focal point is the fourth beast. please find that statement saying that when Rome is, the vision is established, still in the writings of Alonzo Jones, saying the vision is established. I think that is found in Daniel. Is it chapter 11? To establish the vision. And verse 14, it says, and in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. Now, I would like to read that reading. And here in this study, brethren, God divided the revelation to His servants. For example, Ezekiel 37. The dry bones there, Sister White explained, spiritual resurrection. Spiritual resurrection to what? To the spiritual Israel. But the knowledge given by God to Beti-Hotep is literal resurrection to the literal Israel. But both of them are precious truths. There is a revelation revealed by God to Sister White, which was not revealed to Beti-Hotep, but there are also revelations that was revealed by God to Beti-Hotep, which was not revealed to Sister White. Or in other words, that statement in, is it Counsel to Sabbath School Work, saying that many gems of light scattered to be gathered to become property of the remnant people of God. And that is pointing to spiritual aspects, brothers and sisters. Counsel to Sabbath School Work. Is it page 34? Or I no longer remember the statement. Saying that many gems of light are scattered to be gathered to become property of the remnant people of God. And I fully believe that in the first place, that word scatter is divided by God. Some of the message was revealed by God to William Miller, to Joshua Himes, to Sylvester Bless, to Sister White, Alonzo Jones, Wagoner, and then Beti-Hotep. And we need to gather them as one. He says, many gems are yet scattered that are to be gathered together to become the property of the remnant people of God. Counsel to Sabbath School Work on page 34. Now, let us go back to the statement. It said, and again in Daniel 11, is it verse 4? I would like to read Daniel 11. Daniel 11 verse, let me read again. It says, again, in Daniel 11 verse 4, there is marked the concurrence of events which calls into the field of prophecy and history of the Roman power. And when the Roman power does enter the field, the word says that it is done to establish the vision. The children of robbers shall exalt themselves to establish the vision. This shows that the Roman power was the great object of the vision, that whatever was given preceding the rise of that power was given only as certain stepping stones unto the time when that power should rise, and that when this power was met in its rise, the object of the vision was met, the vision was established. And when that power is once entered upon the scene, it continues, if not in one pace, then just as certainly in another, till until the time of the coming of the Lord and the end of the world. And it says, signs of the times, brothers and sisters, November 21, 1900. Now ponder deeply that statement, brethren. It is not pointing to the dark ages. It is pointing to the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy when the vision is established. What does it mean? The vision is established. The Roman power, the power of the Roman supremacy began to rise. And do not forget that statement on the great controversy, 573. It says, the great controversy, 573. In the movements now in progress in the United States to secure for the institutions and usages of the church the support of the state, Protestants are following in the steps of papists. Nay, more, they are opening the door for the papacy to regain in Protestant America the supremacy which she has lost in the old world. And that which gives greater significance to this movement is the fact that the principal object contemplated is the enforcement of Sunday observance, a customs which originated with Rome and which he claims as the sign of her authority. It is the spirit of the papacy, the spirit of conformity to worldly customs, the veneration for human traditions above the commandments of God, that is permitting the Protestant churches and leading them on to the same work of Sunday exaltation which the papacy has done before them. The Great Controversy, 573. Brethren, you might peruse to read the entire writings of Sister White, writings of Alonzo Jones, writings of B.T. Hotep, or all inspired writings. You can never read Protestant Europe. The descriptions of Europe is the Catholic lands of Europe. Writings of Alonzo Jones, B.T. Hotep, Sister White, it is America, which is called the Protestant America. Now, brothers and sisters, it was predicted beforehand, 1,000 years ago in the Bible, that the lost supremacy of the papacy in the old world, in the continent of Europe, will again be regained in the United States of America. And that is the object of the book of Daniel. When that power is established in the United States of America, then the vision is established. What does it mean? That when that vision is established, that is the promise. God says, I will set up the kingdom. And that would be our main target in this study in the book of Daniel. And it is found in the second mention of the judicial session, and also the let us continue reading, brothers and sisters. in this study. So I would like to read again the statement in the Shepherd's Rod in track number 15. It says, so from verse 23 to verse 27, now, I would like to read first verse 19. It says, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, break in pieces, and stamped the residue with his teeth. Now, brothers and sisters, verse 16 is the first request of Daniel. Let us read verse 16. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and we know it was explained by the Shepherd's Rod that it is Angel Gabriel. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. So the first request of Daniel is verse 16, to explain his vision from chapter 7, verse 1 to 14. But the request of Daniel is not specific. And this is the first explanation given by Angel Gabriel. Verse 17 and 18. These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. Then it says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. And the Shepherds Rod declared that these two verses, the explanation of Angel Gabriel, is very brief, very short. Then Daniel made the second request. But the second request of Daniel, according to track 15, page 15 and 16, is already specific concerning the fourth beast as well as to the judgment. So that is the second request of Daniel found on verse 19. And then Gabriel made the explanation on verse 20, and it says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom three fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Verse 21, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break in pieces. And the 10 horns of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. Verse 26, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. Verse 27, and the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. Verse 28, hereto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I keep the matter in my heart. Now, brothers and the saints, and prevailed against them. And then, verse 22. So, verse 21 and verse 22 are the words of Daniel. Until the Ancient of Days came, and the judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So, this is the two verses by which Daniel want to know about the horn that made war with the saints and prevailed against them. And verse 22 is concerning the judgment. Daniel is requesting Angel Gabriel confining to the horn and to the judgment. And the explanation given by Angel Gabriel is found on verse 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. But in verse 28, Daniel still testified that he did not as yet understand, even to the second explanation given by Angel Gabriel after Daniel requested the second request, brothers and sisters, to confine his explanation to the horn and the judgment. But in reality, verse 19 is the second request of Daniel, by which Daniel did not mention the judgment, only saying, verse 19, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast. So, Daniel chapter 7, the first mention of, the second mention of Daniel is found only on verse 19 and verse 21 and verse 22. Verse 19, verse 21 and 22. Verse 20, verse 23 to 27, that is the explanation given by Gabriel. But the first explanation given by Gabriel is pointing only to the request concerning the fourth beast. But Daniel added in verse 21 and 22 the judgment. So, verse 23 to verse 27, it is concerning the fourth beast as well as the judgment, brothers and sisters. So we'll continue that subject, brethren, concerning Daniel chapter 7, to have a complete understanding concerning the first judicial session mentioned twice and the first judicial sitting mentioned twice. Let us distinctly separate the judicial session and the judicial sitting. The first judicial sitting, the first mention contained 14 verses, according to the Shepherd's Rod. And that is the explanation of Daniel of what he saw in vision. But the second mention of the judicial sitting is divided into two requests. Brothers and sisters, into two requests. The second request divided into two. Verse 19 is the second request, but the first of the second request. And verse 21 and 22 is the second request, or the second of the second request, because the first request is found on verse 16. The second request is verse 19. But in the second request, Daniel forget to mention the judgment. So when Angel Gabriel explained verse 20 to the second request, Daniel inserted and Daniel mentioned the judgment. Verse 21 and 22. So Angel Gabriel gave the explanation concerning the fourth beast as well as the judgment. Verse 23 to verse 27. But the testimony of Daniel on verse 28, it says that whatever he understand concerning the second explanation of Gabriel on the second request, he keep it the matter in his heart. And we will continue that subject, the understanding of Daniel concerning the second request of the explanation of Gabriel. What is the thing that Daniel understand by which he keep the matter in his heart according to Daniel 7 verse 28. We'll continue that subject, and may the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. Have a beautiful and wonderful evening.